For 22 years, I oversaw the production floor at the plant, achieving a flawless safety record, not a single significant incident. My reward? A simple cardboard box to hold my personal belongings. My name is, let's say, Mark Olson, a 58-year-old man, and I was the chief foreman at Central Plains Industries in Oklahoma City. We manufactured high-pressure valves and related equipment for oil refineries, precise work where even minor errors could have fatal downstream consequences. One Monday, Brenda from Human Resources summoned me to a meeting. There, seated at the conference table, was Richard Miller, the newly appointed operations manager, a man who'd only been with the company for a mere 4 months. He sat there with a pristine spreadsheet, his hands clean, his shirt impeccably pressed. This fellow hadn't even stepped onto the factory floor beyond the obligatory safety inspection. "Mark," Brenda began, pushing a file across the mahogany table, "we're making some changes to our operational structure. The company is streamlining its supervisory roles." Richard nodded in agreement, muttering something about market pressures and competitive restructuring. I opened the folder. It was my severance package. 2 weeks to train my successor. Half my pension would be paid immediately, the rest in monthly installments. Even the company logo at the top of the page seemed unfamiliar, a subtle change they'd implemented the previous year without a word to the production staff. "Your replacement starts tomorrow," Brenda added, as if announcing the cafeteria menu. "His name is David Evans. He has an MBA from the University of Oklahoma. Quite promising, they say." I closed the folder, my gaze falling upon the rich wood grain of the table. 22 years, 0 major accidents. 350 employees had left the facility unharmed every single day under my supervision. I had crafted the safety protocols they still utilized, developed the maintenance schedules they adhered to, and personally trained every foreman and technician on that floor. "I understand," I replied. Richard looked visibly relieved. Brenda's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. That evening, I took the scenic route home, driving past the river where the old refineries used to be. My father had worked in one before the companies relocated southward. He'd always told me, "Mark, a man's true worth lies in his accomplishments, not his words." I had built something at Central Plains, a system, a culture, a stellar safety record. And now, I had only 2 weeks to entrust it to a newcomer who wouldn't grasp the intricate details he was about to dismantle. Upon reaching home, I contacted my old friend Robert, a retiree from the previous year. "They're letting me go," I informed him. "The scoundrels," Robert exclaimed. "Are you going to make a fuss?" "No," I responded. "But they'll soon realize their mistake. Some knowledge simply can't be transferred in just 14 days. I hung up and glanced at my work boots, still bearing the grime of 22 years of factory life. They had no idea what they were losing. My tenure at Central Plains began when my son Michael was only a year old. Jennifer and I had been married 5 years, and that job offered stability, health insurance, a future. Initially, I worked 3 shifts weekly. Then after 3 years I became a supervisor, assistant foreman after 7 years, and finally the chief foreman after old Harry Peterson's retirement. The factory floor was my second home. I knew each machine's unique sound, could detect when the number 3 press was struggling before any warning light activated, could spot a hazard from across the room, smell when hydraulic fluid needed replacing, and even sense a 2-degree temperature fluctuation. Jennifer often joked that I cared more about that factory than our own house. Perhaps she was right. After her departure 10 years ago, taking Michael to California, I poured all my energy into my work, holidays, weekends, even stormy days, when many of my crew couldn't make it in. The company changed ownership twice during my time there. First, Midwest Industries acquired it in 2012. They maintained most operations. Then Apex Capital purchased it in 2021. These private equity firms prioritized algorithms and efficiency metrics, immediately initiating cost-cutting measures. I noticed the changes gradually: reduced maintenance budgets, cheaper parts, longer intervals between equipment servicing, the replacement of 3 experienced mechanics with contract workers, diminished inventory of spare parts, and escalating production quotas each quarter. 6 months prior, Richard Miller, armed with his MBA and spreadsheets, arrived. He convened a floor meeting his first week. "We're implementing new performance tracking across all departments," he announced. "Data-driven decision-making is the future of manufacturing." Afterward, my lead machinist, Carlos, pulled me aside. "Mark, this guy's going to cause trouble." He then asked if we could adjust the safety lockout procedure to save time. I dismissed it then, assuring Carlos that we would continue as usual. But the warning signals persisted. Richard ceased attending monthly safety reviews. Emails regarding equipment maintenance went unanswered. My requests for training funds were repeatedly denied, and 3 new junior supervisors, fresh out of college, started questioning procedures we'd refined over decades. Is it really necessary to run a full diagnostic after every shift change? One asked. Another echoed, these daily inspections seem excessive. The manual only recommends weekly checks. I began keeping my own records, documenting and photographing maintenance requests, and noting every safety-related discussion. Something told me I might need proof of our diligent work. I just didn't anticipate being shown the door so quickly. David Evans, my replacement, arrived on his first day in dress shoes and a tie, a 27-year-old with gelled hair, and a tablet he consulted every few minutes. I'm eager to learn from you before taking over, he said, extending a firm handshake. I've already reviewed all the production metrics and identified several efficiency opportunities. I nodded, handing him steel-toed boots and safety glasses. Factory tour first, metrics later. For 2 weeks, I guided David through every aspect of the job: maintenance schedules, safety protocols, personnel files. I introduced him to every shift supervisor and lead operator. But as the days passed, I noticed a pattern. He meticulously documented processes but overlooked the human element. He didn't inquire about Carlos's son, who had recently joined the Air Force, didn't recall that Maria on the assembly line needed extra breaks due to her diabetes, and didn't understand the necessity of coaxing the number 2 milling machine on cold mornings. On my last Thursday, I overheard him speaking with Richard in the break room. Once we implement the new shift schedule, we can likely consolidate 2 maintenance positions, David said. And that safety redundancy Mark insists on for the hydraulic press. The manual doesn't mandate those extra checks. Richard nodded, clearly pleased. Exactly the fresh perspective we needed. They didn't see me standing there. I walked away quietly, a chilling feeling settling in my stomach. These weren't simply cost-cutting measures. They were dismantling the safeguards I'd painstakingly built over decades. Protections that prevented injuries and saved lives. Carlos, Maria, Tom from maintenance, and Arthur, the night shift supervisor. We met in the parking lot after work. They're about to start cutting corners, I told them. And this new guy doesn't know what he's missing. What do you want us to do, Mark? Carlos asked. We can't just ignore the new boss. No, I agreed, but you can document everything. Keep your own records. And if things start going wrong with the equipment, I gave each of them my personal phone number, written on index cards. Call me. Not management. Me. My last day consisted of clearing out my locker. David was already at my desk, rearranging things. I handed him my keys. Any final advice? He asked, barely looking up from his tablet. Yes, I said. Listen to the floor. The machines will talk to you if you pay attention. He smiled politely, clearly not understanding. I left without fanfare. No party, no cake, no farewell speech. 22 years concluded with a handshake from Brenda in Human Resources and a deactivated parking pass. But I wasn't finished with Central Plains Industries. Not yet. I was merely biding my time. 3 weeks after my departure, Carlos called. They're altering the maintenance schedule on the hydraulic presses, he said. His voice hushed, as if he were hiding in the supply closet. Changing it from weekly to bi-weekly inspections. Document it, I instructed. Note any pressure fluctuations, leaks, or unusual sounds. 2 days later, Tom from maintenance called. They'd rejected my parts order for the backup generator, stating we could wait until the quarterly inventory. I kept a detailed log of every call, every change, every shortcut taken. After 4 weeks, I decided on a formal approach. I emailed Richard and Brenda, keeping my message professional and concise. I expressed my concerns about the alterations to safety and maintenance protocols. Having overseen these systems for over 2 decades, I offered to consult regarding the potential risks. Brenda responded within an hour. Thank you for your concern, Mark. The transition has been smooth, and David has already implemented several efficiency improvements. We'll certainly reach out if we need your expertise. Corporate jargon for stay away. 6 weeks later, the first accident occurred. Minor. A belt slipping on the number 3 press, causing a 2-hour shutdown. No injuries. Then a small hydraulic leak in week 7, followed by 3 separate electrical issues in week 8. Arthur called me after each incident. The new guy's blaming the equipment, Mark. Says it's all outdated and poorly maintained. My blood boiled. That equipment had performed flawlessly under proper care. By week 10, I couldn't bear it any longer. I drove to the plant during the lunch break and waited in the parking lot. When Carlos emerged, I beckoned him over. "How bad is it really?" I asked. Carlos looked around cautiously before replying. "Bad. Production's down 15%. They fired Tom last week. Said he was resistant to change. And David's got his college buddy running maintenance now. A guy who couldn't distinguish a torque wrench from a screwdriver. Has anyone been hurt?" That was my greatest fear. Not yet. But Arthur almost lost a hand when a safety switch malfunctioned on the cutting line. David wrote it off as operator error. I made a decision. I knew people at the State Industrial Safety Board. One call could trigger an inspection. The next morning I made that call explaining my concerns, my experience at the plant, and the specific changes that worried me. The inspector, a woman named Susan Davis, took detailed notes. "We'll conduct an unannounced inspection within the next 2 weeks," she assured me. I felt a sense of relief. The system would rectify itself. 3 days later, Carlos called again, panic in his voice. "They know, Mark. Someone told management you're behind the inspection request." Richard's furious. My stomach plummeted. "What's happening?" "They've got us working overtime cleaning everything up, falsifying maintenance logs. The production lines are shut down so they can fix all the problems before the inspection." Then came the legal letter, hand-delivered to my home. Central Plains Industries accused me of malicious interference with business operations and breach of non-disclosure agreements. They threatened a lawsuit if I continued disseminating false information about company practices. I contacted my lawyer, Jonathan Reed. He reviewed the letter and sighed. "They're bluffing about the NDA violations. You haven't shared any proprietary information, but they could make your life difficult with legal fees alone. Can they stop the inspection?" I asked. "No. Once the safety board decides to inspect, it happens. But Mark, be cautious. These corporate entities play dirty when backed into a corner." I hung up, a mixture of anger and anxiety churning within me. They were trying to intimidate me into silence while frantically rectifying the very issues I'd highlighted. But what would happen after the inspection? They'd return to their shortcuts, only more discreetly next time. I needed more than a single inspection. I needed concrete evidence of systemic negligence. The inspection came and went. Central Plains passed to barely. Susan Davis called me afterward. "They addressed the immediate safety concerns," she said. "But I noted several issues in my report. Their maintenance documentation was inconsistent. Several employees seemed rehearsed in their responses. Will there be penalties?" I asked. "Minor ones. Not enough to alter their behavior long term." I thanked her and hung up, frustrated but unsurprised. Companies like Central Plains knew how to navigate these situations, fix the visible problems, pay the small fines, and resume business as usual. That weekend my doorbell rang. It was Arthur, looking anxious. "Sorry to bother you at home, Mark. I needed to show you something away from the plant." He handed me a thumb drive. "What's this?" I asked. "Maintenance logs, the genuine ones, and the fabricated ones they created for the inspection. Plus emails between Richard and corporate about the cost-saving initiative. They've been planning these cuts for a year, even before you were let go. They needed someone who wouldn't resist like you did. Insurance covers accidents. Missed earnings targets cost us investors. They were gambling with people's lives. My people, the ones I'd protected for 22 years. There's more," Arthur said, pointing to another folder. "David knows the equipment is failing. Look at these maintenance requests he's denied." The list was shocking. Critical safety components, backup systems, preventive replacements, all rejected with the same note. "Defer to next quarter per budget constraints." "Why are you showing me this, Arthur?" I asked. "This could cost you your job." Arthur's expression hardened. "Maria's nephew was hurt yesterday. A press guard failed, the one David said wasn't critical to replace. He's 18. Lost 3 fingers. They're calling it operator error, making him sign papers while he's still on painkillers." My hands clenched involuntarily. "They can't do that." "They are," Arthur said. "And it's only a matter of time before something worse happens." After Arthur left, I sat in my kitchen for hours, the evidence spread across my table. I was torn between rage and responsibility. These weren't just statistics. These were lives, people I'd worked alongside for decades, families I knew. I picked up my phone to call the safety board again. then stopped. Another inspection wouldn't be enough. Central Plains would temporarily clean up, pay another fine, and continue the cycle. No, this demanded a different approach. I called Carlos, then Maria, then 6 other trusted veterans from the floor. We arranged to meet at Robert's house the following day, neutral ground. When everyone arrived, I presented what I'd learned, showing them the evidence Arthur had provided. "So what do we do?" Carlos asked when I finished. "Go to the media." I shook my head. "Not yet. First we need leverage." "What kind of leverage?" Maria asked. "The kind that hits their bottom line," I said. "I'm going to need records of every shortcut, every failure, every near miss since I left, documented, dated, photographed if possible. They'll fire anyone they catch collecting that information," Robert pointed out. "I know," I said. "That's why we need to be clever and patient." I looked at these skilled workers, who deserved better than to be treated as disposable cogs in a corporate machine. "Give me 2 weeks," I said. "And whatever you do, stay vigilant and safe." For the next 2 weeks, I became a shadow at Central Plains. I never stepped foot on the property, but my presence was felt. Carlos and the others fed me information daily. Shift reports, equipment failures, safety incidents. I compiled everything meticulously, building an irrefutable case. Meanwhile, I made 3 key moves. First, I contacted William Harris, a former client who now worked for Central Plains' largest customer, Peak Energy Resources. We met for coffee. "Mark, good to see you," William said. "Been wondering where you disappeared to." "Forced retirement," I said. "But that's not why I asked to meet." I showed him photos of defective pressure valves that had shipped from Central Plains in the past month, valves that would be installed in Peak Energy's systems.
"These passed inspection?"
William asked, frowning. "The new inspection process." "Yes. The shortcuts have consequences, William. I couldn't live with myself if something failed at one of your facilities." William examined the photos carefully.
"This is serious, Mark."
"We have decades-long relationships with our suppliers, but safety comes first. I'm going to have Peak Energy conduct its own quality audit. We need to see this for ourselves." My second move was contacting Susan Davis again at the safety board. This time, instead of general concerns, I provided specific documented violations, complete with dates, times, and photographic evidence. "This is far more substantial than before," Susan said. "I'll need to involve my supervisor." "I understand," I replied. "Just keep my name out of it for now." The third move was the riskiest. I contacted David Evans directly, asking him to meet me for lunch away from the plant. To my surprise, he agreed. He looked exhausted when he arrived. "I appreciate you meeting me," I said after we ordered. "How's the floor running?" David ran a hand through his hair. "Honestly, it's a mess. Equipment's failing left and right, corporate's breathing down my neck about production targets. But I can't meet quota with half the line breaking down every other day." "They didn't tell you what you were walking into, did they?" "They said the operation needed modernizing, that you were resistant to change. But every time I try to fix something, 3 more problems arise." I nodded. "That's because they dismantled a system that worked. Those maintenance schedules you scrapped, they weren't excessive. They were necessary. Richard says the budget can't support that level of maintenance." "And how's the budget looking with production down and quality issues rising?" David's silence was his answer. "Listen," I said. "I didn't ask you here to gloat. I asked because in about 2 weeks, several things are going to happen. Peak Energy is going to demand a quality audit. The safety board is going to conduct another surprise inspection. The evidence of systematic safety violations is going to land on several desks, including corporate headquarters." David paled. "Are you threatening me?" "No. I'm giving you a choice. You can be the scapegoat when this all comes crashing down. The inexperienced manager who couldn't handle the job. Or you can get ahead of it." "How?" "By documenting everything Richard and corporate have pushed on you. Every maintenance request you submitted that was denied. Every safety concern that was dismissed." David stared at his untouched food. "They'll fire me. Maybe. But you'd be doing the right thing. And you wouldn't have a preventable death on your conscience." I left David with my card. "Think about it. You've got a week." 3 days later, he texted me. "I'm in. What do you need from me?" The pieces were falling into place. Now we just needed one final catalyst, a situation that would force Central Plains to face the consequences of their choices. It was Richard Miller himself. "Mark," he said, his voice strained, "we have a situation at the plant." "So I've heard," I replied calmly. The shutdown had been all over the plant's communication system by midnight. "Look, I'll be blunt, we need your expertise. The main press is down, production's halted, and we have a massive backlog of orders. Our maintenance team can't identify the problem. That's because you fired Tom, who maintained that press for 15 years, I pointed out. Richard sighed heavily. "Can we put the past aside for now? The company is willing to bring you in as a consultant to get us operational again." "I'm listening. $500 per hour. Cash. No questions asked about how you fix it. We just need it running by the end of the week." I almost laughed. They thought this was about money. "I'll be there in an hour," I said. "But I have conditions. 1. I bring my own team. Carlos, Arthur, and Maria. 2. I have complete authority over repair decisions and parts orders. 3. I want access to all maintenance records for the past 6 months." Richard hesitated, then conceded. "Fine, whatever it takes." When I arrived at the plant an hour later, the floor was in chaos. Operators stood idle, managers huddled in corners whispering urgently, and the massive hydraulic press sat silent and dark. David approached me immediately. "Thank God you're here. It's worse than I thought," he said. I nodded. "Let's see it." As I inspected the press, everything became clear. Multiple system failures caused by months of neglected maintenance, exactly what I'd warned about. I turned to Richard, who was hovering nearby. "I can fix this, but first, I need to show you something." I pulled out my phone and opened my email. I just sent this report to the Apex Capital Executive Team, the State Safety Board, and Peak Energy Resources. It details every safety violation, every shortcut, and every risk created by the policies you've implemented. Richard's face went pale. "You can't do that." "I already have," I said. "Now do you want this press fixed or not?" 3 days. That's how long it took to repair the hydraulic press, a repair that would have been routine maintenance if they'd followed my original schedules. During those 3 days, Central Plains experienced a whirlwind of repercussions. Peak Energy suspended their orders pending a full quality review. The safety board arrived for another far more thorough inspection, and Apex Capital dispatched its own operations team to assess the situation. By day 3, Richard was gone, reassigned to corporate headquarters. David remained, but in a diminished role, reporting to a new operations director sent from the parent company. That new director, Stephen Carter, called me into his office after we got the press running again. "Impressive work," he said. "The corporate team has reviewed your documentation. Very thorough." I waited, saying nothing. "We're implementing a complete overhaul of maintenance and safety protocols at all our facilities." Stephen continued. "And we'd like to offer you a position, Director of Manufacturing Operations for Central Plains." I considered the offer. "At what salary?" Stephen named a figure 35% higher than my previous salary. "And complete autonomy over maintenance schedules and safety procedures." "Within budget constraints, yes." I shook my head. "That's the problem. Safety can't be budgeted, quarter by quarter." I stood to leave, then paused. "I'll consult. 3 days a week, my hourly rate. I'll help you rebuild the systems I created, train your people properly, and get production back to where it should be. But I won't be an employee again." Stephen considered this, then nodded. "Acceptable." I didn't return for the title or the money. I returned for Carlos, Maria, Arthur, and all the others who deserved to work in a safe environment. I returned to rebuild what I'd spent 22 years creating. When I walked onto the floor the following Monday, the machines were already humming more smoothly. They knew their old caretaker had returned. They knew what needed to be done.